2023 could make a strong case for being the best year for video games. With the likes of Baldur's Gate 3, Final Fantasy 16, and many more, this year has been packed with amazing games. With that being said, 2023 could also be viewed as a year with some of the biggest duds as well. And to start off the end of the year ranking videos, I figured why not start at the bottom first with the worst games of 2023. Before that though, if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. I do a lot of ranking videos like this one, and most of them are usually on horror games like Resident Evil. But I'm doing things a little differently here at the end of the year. Throughout the month of December, I'll be doing best and worst things related to video games released in 2023. So subscribe, hit that like button, and enjoy today's first of many ranking videos for 2023 games. Oh, and one side note, if you guys want to make a drinking game out of how many times I say 2023 in this video, how about it? Anyway, my name is Ruben with Nerdspace Games, and this is my top 10 worst video games of 2023. Let's get it. Number 10, Unholy.
This won't change anything. What you've interrupted here, I can finish it on the other side. In the Eternal City.
When making this list, I really try to push myself away from indie games, mainly because they just don't have a lot of the support and money that these bigger developers do. But sometimes, some developers just need a wake-up call so they can learn from their mistakes. Unfortunately, I can't give a break to Duality with their game Unholy. Maybe I'm a little harsher on this game because I love horror indie games, but I feel like this game missed on every single mark. The story was boring and predictable. The twist and ending felt like one of those I've seen it before type of deals. The gameplay was extremely clunky and focused a lot on stealth mechanics, which just didn't work well since the AI for most of the enemies were so bad that it made the game a cakewalk for most of the experience. The voice acting was obviously bad, but honestly for an indie game, I'm not looking for top-notch voice acting anyway. And a lot of the puzzles were too easy, and at times I felt like they were made for a kid's game, which obviously didn't feel right since this is a horror game. There are a few shiny moments with the game that kept it from moving further up on this list though. For example, I really love the mask and the slingshot mechanics. Actually, I wish this was explored a little more. In the game, you can find different masks which gives the player different abilities. Like one can protect you from a poisonous gas, while another allows you to see invisible enemies. Oh, and one annoying feature is that you can't use the abilities from a mask while also using your slingshot, which this actually gets extremely annoying when you have to deal with those invisible enemies. As for the slingshot, it was probably the most redeeming gameplay mechanic of Unholy. The ability to use your different emotions as ammo for your slingshot was a neat and creative mechanic. You could power generators, destroy objects, create smoke screens, and even distract enemies with different abilities from your emotions. Sadly though, this single mechanic isn't enough to redeem the game from the amount of issues it had, which is exactly why it is here at the bottom of the worst games of 2023 list. Number 9, Forspoken.
Still here.
Whoever is doing this, stop. This is one sick joke. I am out of here.
So unlike a lot of the games on this list, Forspoken isn't necessarily a broken game, it's just a bad game. Leading up to the release of Forspoken, it had a lot going for it. Square Enix was developing it, the combat looked really cool, and the story didn't look half bad. So where did the game go wrong? Let's start with the two of the biggest issues that I had with the game. The story and the characters, none of which are unique and interesting in the slightest. The main character, Frey, seemed like an annoying character straight out of one of those CW teen dramas like Riverdale.
Destruction and corruption are forms of creation in themselves.
Wow, you sound like a serial killer.
What?
Destruction and corruption are beautiful forms of creation in themselves.
I don't sound like that.
You absolutely sound like that.
No, you absolutely sound like that. Yeah, see? Two can play at that game.
You're fucking stupid.
Her attitude throughout the entire game ultimately made her extremely unlikable, which is awful for the main character. And it's no fault to the actress. The script and the direction that the story took just kind of made her annoying to watch. Like, one of the things that I think Square Enix was trying to go for was to make a charming yet friendly relationship between Frey and Cuff. By the way, Cuff is that talking magical bracelet thing. Multiple times he kept trying to crack jokes and pick on her, but most of those moments felt more like Cuff being kind of a prick versus the friendly bickering buddy cop relationship that they were going for. Frey's character didn't help with the situation either, as she pretty much took every single opportunity to drop the F-bomb. Seriously, like, I felt like she said fuck in every single one of her lines, most of which just kind of felt out of place and was just her cursing just to curse. Kind of like how you would see a new kid learning a new bad word and then using it in front of a lot of his friends. Yeah, it was that bad. So with both main characters lacking, it ultimately made for a boring playthrough of the main campaign, especially since the other characters of the game were not that much more interesting either. The story was one of those been there, seen that type of stories before, as it took a page straight out of Narnia and tried to create their own mature version of that world, and yeah, they just didn't deliver it at all. One feature I did like about Forspoken was the gameplay though. Unlike a lot of people who hated the mechanics of the game, I actually found it to be somewhat enjoyable. Using magic to do parkour and explore the open world to the different types of magic attacks that Frey had at her disposal made for a somewhat satisfying experience. The real problem with the gameplay though is that it became extremely boring and repetitive not long into the playthrough. Every side quest felt like the exact same quest in different areas, and the open world landscape was boring and bland. And while the combat was somewhat satisfying, it couldn't make up for the lack of enemy variation. Enemies, including mini bosses, would essentially be reused again and again and again with different colors to them. The main reason why it finds itself on this list though comes down to it being a AAA game that just didn't deliver on anything other than subpar gameplay. And yeah, it was a $70 game at release. While I don't think it's the worst game of 2023, it definitely makes a case for one of the most disappointing games of the year, and ultimately it finds itself at the bottom of my worst games of 2023.
Great start.
Number 8, Redfall. Speaking of most disappointing games of 2023, Redfall is another one that's deserving of that title as well. I mean, Redfall had big shoes to fill. It was a game that was being developed by the Arcane Studios, the same team that brought us amazing single-player games like Prey and Dishonored. Yet for some reason, this team was asked to take on a multiplayer game. And while we did have some reservations about this, the fact is that Arcane had yet to fully disappoint us until Redfall. This game was apparently supposed to be a Left 4 Dead meets Far Cry experience. The concept of the game was fairly simple and it looked interesting enough. Killing a bunch of bloodthirsty vampires and a co-op experience that was similar to the Left 4 Dead experience sounded like a good time to me. Ultimately though, Redfall just did not deliver at all on any of it. Starting with the story and the characters, you don't get much there. Most of the cutscenes are delivered in still images, which is kind of fucking annoying by the way, since this is a AAA game. Yet because of this choice, none of the characters, even the playable ones, didn't really stand out that much in the slightest. Honestly though, the most important part of a game like this has got to be the gameplay. And sadly, once again, Redfall fails to deliver. From a technical side of things, at least at release, the game was a chore to play through. With the amount of times you would crash or end up in a game-breaking glitch, it was a disaster at release. Even if you did manage to get through the game without experiencing any game-ending technical issues, the core gameplay was still a problem too. Probably the biggest issue for the gameplay came down to the poor AI. Vampires and humans alike shared a similar problem. They would find themselves staring at walls or the opposite direction and not even posing a threat to the player. Hell, even the boss fights grew annoying as most of them defeated themselves by getting stuck or not doing anything against the players. Just like most games like this though, it was kind of fun at times. Whenever you played with friends, teaming up with other players to kill hordes of vampires, it gave you a small taste of that old Left 4 Dead feeling that we all fell in love with. And the scenery was actually pretty cool as Redfall had a lot to explore. But similar to the issues with Forspoken, there wasn't any real motivation to explore, and unfortunately, a lot of the players missed out on some really cool and interesting scenery. As far as the progress of the game, you get through the story by completing missions. Unfortunately, these missions are some of the most annoying parts of the game as it's extremely repetitive. Complete a certain number of missions, beat the vampire underboss, rinse and repeat. That's the game, guys. That's it. Oh, and don't even get me started with the final boss of the game. Thank God this game was on Game Pass because I would have lost my mind if I paid full price for this. Number 7, Crime Boss, Rockay City.
Get eyes on the Coast Guard.
Yes, sir. We'll take his boat.
No, don't take him down yet.
But that will stop him.
No, let him get confident.
Uh-huh.
We will take him with a big load when he is deeply out of pocket.
Oh, smart.
Yes, that will halt his troops.
If Crime Boss, Rockay City does not pop up on your top 10 worst games of 2023, then I'm guessing you probably haven't played it. Straight up, I'm honestly surprised with myself for not putting it any higher on this list, but I guess I just feel like the others above it pissed me off a little more. Anyway, Crime Boss is the perfect example of a game having a big budget with big time celebrities and still sucking. And I mean sucking bad. Rockay City is a heist game at its core with a cast of talented action stars. People like Chuck Norris, Michael Madsen, Danny Glover, and Michael Rooker are just a few of the big names that provide their voice to characters in this game. Yet despite having some of the biggest action movie icons, the fact is that it still suffers from bad acting. Each character delivers all the lines with no emotion or conviction at all. Chuck Norris is one of my least favorite actors here. Every line from him sounds like a teenager trying to sound cool in front of his friends. Michael Madsen, on the other hand, took a different approach. I don't know if it was the developer's choice or Michael's choice to de-age him so much, but because of that decision, his voice does not match his character at all.
Fine. Is getting the gear gonna be a problem?
Nah, man, Rockay's a weapons paradise. But the price ain't no bargain.
Unless...
I happen to know a supplier who loves to bury his beak in some blow. I can cut a great deal if we feed his habit.
Well, how strong a habit are we talking about exactly? Because, you know, I've heard you get more miles when you do your pounds.
Even if it looks like him. The problem is that the character is like 30 to 40 years younger than the actor. It was cringy at best. I will say a lot of the actors, it wasn't the fault of their skills. Michael Rooker's character is the perfect example of this. You can tell the guy is trying to work with what he has, but the concept of trying to force this character to consistently make football references made it cringy and annoying each time he was on screen. Oh, and notice how I haven't even talked about the gameplay yet. If you think that, okay, well, it's a co-op heist game, maybe it can be redeemed there. Nope, the gameplay is broken. The gunplay feels prehistoric, the graphics seems like an indie shooter at best, and between all the crashes, bugs, and just annoying glitches, it was hard to even push through the game. Oh, and on top of all of that, the game has a feature where if you die, you start at the very beginning of it all. So yeah, easily on the list for worst games of 2023. And if you don't have it on your list, go play this game right now. That way you can see how bad this game really is. Actually, don't do that. Don't give them your money. Please don't do that. Number 6, For Solis. Oh, For Solis, For Solis, For Solis. Remember when I said I'm a little nicer to indie games and I try to avoid putting them on the worst games list if possible? Well, For Solis is another game on this list that is made by an indie developer, Fallen Leaf. Going into the summer of 2023, one of my most anticipated games was For Solis. The idea of a science fiction horror game set in a space station on Mars really had me excited. Add that to the incredible cast that they put together and the visuals for the game, and it seems like it was gonna be one of the biggest dark horses of 2023. Unfortunately, this game was a disaster. I really don't know where to start. I guess, like with my reviews, how about we start with the gameplay? Oh wait, there is no gameplay. Seriously, it's just a walking simulator. Now, I'm not completely against walking simulators, but when you don't include any other features at all to it, then it's essentially just a long movie. There were some puzzles, but they were pretty much broken down for you to the point that even a preschooler could have figured it out.
No wonder.
Oh, and there were QuickTime events, yet the developers even screwed this mechanic up. The one thing about QuickTime events is that if you fail one or most of them, you die, it's game over. Yet there are no consequences for missing a single QuickTime event. None at all. You don't get a game over, the ending isn't affected, nothing. So it's like, why are they even in the game, honestly? Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that minor detail. You can't die in this game. There is no such thing as a game over. So how is this even a game? Okay though, okay, all right, let me back up. If the gameplay is non-existent, then maybe the cast and the story will win you over. Unfortunately, it doesn't. While the cast is amazing and I love their performance as each of these characters, the fact is that the dialogue and the story is just bad. The dialogue makes no sense at different points of the game. For example, Jack finds a dead body in For Solis. He's freaking out and terrified, and he should be. He just found a fucking dead body. Seconds later, he's telling Jessica a joke and they are laughing together like nothing is wrong at all.
You remember when they first introduced Titans?
Excavators?
Yeah. I still remember the redundancies. That'll be us at some point.
Well, they will always need someone to fix them.
I guess so.
The story sucks too. Predictable ending, boring characters, and a great premise that doesn't execute well at all. The only interesting part about the game, in my opinion, was the side plots. The things that we kept getting hints to regarding aliens or monsters or something, but none of it was really explored to the fullest. Overall, this game was probably one of my biggest disappointments of 2023, and it is definitely deserving of a spot on my worst games of 2023, if you can even call it a game. Number 5, Greyhill Incident. Finally, the final indie game on the list. Unfortunately, Greyhill Incident is yet another game that screws you out of your money for a disaster of a game. I'll be honest, my expectations were low for this game to begin with, but what I experienced was still surprising despite those low expectations. Some things were on par with my expectations. For example, because I knew it was an indie game, I wasn't surprised by the awful graphics, poor character designs, and poor voice acting. With that being said, there were things that should have delivered regardless of it being an indie game. For example, the combat of the game. You are basically given 2 weapons throughout the entire experience. A baseball bat and a revolver. The revolver can kill any alien in 2 shots, regardless of where you shoot them. Like headshots and shots in the gut have the exact same effect. 2 shots and they're dead. Only problem there is that you are very limited on ammo. I mean, I barely found bullets throughout my playthrough. Now you might be thinking that's perfectly fine since they give you a bat, but here's the thing. The bat might as well be a rubber chicken. The bat doesn't really do any damage to aliens at all. It can kill them, you can knock them down if you hit them 3 times, but unfortunately the bat also takes like 10 fucking seconds to recover from swinging each time. Seriously, the main character Ryan is way out of shape. Even if you do knock an alien down with a bat though, it doesn't put them down forever. It just keeps them down long enough to run and hide from them, which means this game becomes primarily a stealth game. Now listen, I like stealth games. I don't have a problem with them at all. However, I do have a problem when there aren't any consequences of getting caught. It's basically impossible to die in this game, or at least for me it was. All I had to do was spam R2 every single time an alien found me and I broke free. So unless I purposely stopped spamming, I never died. So essentially the same issue that I had with Solis and in not having consequences for failing QuickTime events is the same issue I had with this game. But at least Solis had a better story, still bad, but better and more interesting characters with better acting. This game has none of that. Oh, did I mention it took me less than 2 hours to complete this game? Yeah, a $30 game at launch that took me less than 2 hours to complete. The only things that this game has going for it is the fact that I didn't experience any major glitches or bugs. The setting was okay, and I like Ryan to a certain extent, the main character. Other than that, the game sucked. Number 4, Silent Hill Ascension.
Why are you sitting in the dark? Papa, are you okay?
I didn't get a good look at it. That thing that killed the goats ran to check on your mother.
Papa, where's Mama?
I tried.
Last year, we got the Silent Hill transmission. This event announced not one, but multiple Silent Hill games that were in development. Silent Hill was back. This year, we got our first Silent Hill game in a long time, Silent Hill Ascension. Oh boy, what to say here first. Personally, I don't even know if I should consider it a game. It's more like a web series if anything. But it is a game, a mobile game, but a game nonetheless. Anyway, from the moment that this game was described to us, I knew it was going to be a mess. Taking elements from the supermassive games like Until Dawn and Quarry, Silent Hill Ascension was intended to be a choose-your-own-path experience that would change the canon of the Silent Hill universe. Every day, new episodes would drop and choices would be presented to the viewers. After the viewers voted, Ascension would reveal the results of our decision as a group. While this concept doesn't seem too bad when you compare it to the success of similar games like The Quarry and Until Dawn, the fact is that Genvid did not deliver here at all. Unlike those games, the power wasn't really left to the player but the entire world, meaning that we didn't get the opportunity to explore other choices and make the decisions ourselves, unlike the supermassive games. To make matters worse, Konami and Genvid pulled out some of the most political bullshit on us. Like specifically this rule. Everybody knows the golden rule, right? The one with the gold makes the rules. That's exactly how Ascension pretty much worked. In the game, you can use real life money to purchase influence points. These points could then be used to put more voting power into a specific choice that you want to see play out in Silent Hill Ascension. Essentially, this means the more money you have, the more likely you are to get your way. That is completely fucked. Add that to the fact that the animation is awful, the acting is horrible since they have to deliver quick lines based off of a quick decision made by the people, and that the story is one of the worst in the Silent Hill series, then it is no wonder why this game makes my list for worst video games of 2023. Number 3, The Lord of the Rings, Gollum. The next 3 games on this list are bad, real bad. And while Silent Hill Ascension is at least free to play, these next few games are not, making it even sadder to be this high on this list. For example, The Lord of the Rings Gollum was initially $70. $70 for a broken ass game with mediocre graphics, poor dialogue, poor acting, and an extremely boring story attached to some of the worst gameplay mechanics of all time. So despite me venting there, I'm a huge fan of the Lord of the Rings series. I watch every single movie, including the animated one. I played just about every single AAA game. I even watched Rings of Power, which I'm not even going to touch on that subject, so don't ask. With that being said, when Gollum was announced, I was immediately disappointed. Like, who asked for a Gollum game? Still, I swallowed that disappointment for this game's announcement and decided to buy the game at full price on release. After completing Gollum, I seriously thought it was the worst game ever. I really didn't think there was going to be another game that would top it this year. I mean, the game was barely even playable at the time it was released. Like, I can't tell you how many times it crashed or there were glitches that I ran into that prevented me from finishing the game. And even when the game was working at its best, the voice acting was a joke. Seriously, I get them not wanting to spend the money on Andy Serkis, but what exactly did they spend the money on? They were the ones that chose to make a game about a character that didn't need a game. If that's what they wanted to do with the IP, fine, but at least get Andy Serkis on board or someone that can at least get closer to that voice. Because let me tell you, this was not it.
Without me, eyes are marbles, no darkness they see. Faces look garbled, no flurry they feel. No breath, no cheer, death not to fear. Time is not spent, roses has no scent, and nothing you can marvel without me. But it wasn't roses, my precious, not roses.
But even if you manage to get past the voice, the visuals, and the technical issues, the truth is that there are still other issues with the core mechanics of the game. The stealth sections of the game are a joke. You can literally jump on a box until enemies get tired of you, or literally walk up to their backs, pressing against them, and they do nothing. There's not really much combat either, since all Gollum can do is throw rocks or, of course, strangle a few orcs here and there. With the game taking place in Middle-earth, you would imagine that Gollum may have treated us to a bunch of really cool and unique locations, but once again, you'll be disappointed. I would say a majority of the game takes place inside of a prison of some sort. Most of the main objectives of the game are basically those boring ass side quests that we see in other games. I really wish I could say that it couldn't get any worse than this game, but behold, there are two other games that proved me wrong with that statement. Number 2, Skull Island, Rise of Kong. I can't believe I'm about to say this. Skull Island is not the worst game of 2023. I know. I really thought it was impossible to find a game worse than this one. But I did, and it's by the same fucking publishers, Greyhill Entertainment. Regardless, let's focus on King Kong because while it might not have been the worst game of 2023, it is still really bad, my friends. King Kong ironically shares a lot of issues with every other game on this list. From a technical side of things, this game is full of bugs and glitches, moments where the landscape will disappear and then reappear on parts of the map. Other times you'll find a boss enemy frozen in place and unable to do anything at all. Yet despite all of the technical issues the game has, the worst part of the game is the game itself. Nothing about this experience is fun at all. You have a really boring and obnoxious basic story. Gorilla lives on an island alongside its gorilla parents. Gorilla's parents are killed by a giant dinosaur. Gorilla swears vengeance against the giant dinosaur. Gorilla hunts down giant dinosaur. Gorilla fights giant dinosaur. That's pretty much the story in a nutshell. But you know what? Hey, we can get past a bad story if the gameplay is fun. I mean, it's King Kong, a giant ape smashing things. How hard could it be to make a somewhat fun experience with a premise like that? Well, apparently pretty damn hard. Skull Island, Rise of Kong goes completely out of its way to do everything possible to make us feel small despite playing as a giant gorilla. All of the enemies are giant, mostly bigger than King Kong, meaning the whole feeling of wrecking monsters and enemies smaller than you isn't present in this game at all. What's even more annoying is the fight mechanics. King Kong literally does one combo, a single 3-hit combo over and over and over again. Sure, he has abilities and a skill tree that will add some changes to his gameplay, but for the most part, you will see the exact same hit combo over and over again. Like you have a giant ape that can potentially do all kinds of insane attacks, but instead you leave him with simple mechanics that remind me of a boring ass boxing match. What were you thinking, guys? Unfortunately, the bad doesn't stop here. The world of Skull Island feels repetitive and bland. The visuals look like a bad pop-up storybook, and even moments that are supposed to be dramatic or serious feels like a joke to the point that you can't help but laugh at the creative decisions made here. My favorite, the flashback told in a still image that pops up randomly on the screen that leaves King Kong with one of the goofiest moments in video games this year. But hey, at least I got a good laugh out of it though. There's only 2 reasons why this game isn't the worst game of 2023. 1, it's a King Kong game that has better combat than the other game that we'll talk about in just a moment. And 2, the world of Skull Island might suck to explore, but at least it has something to offer than the game I'm about to talk about next. Number 1, Walking Dead Destinies. So it's sad that 2 games from the same publisher are at the top of the list for worst games of 2023. I'm trying to remember a year that's happened before, and I really can't think of one off the top of my head. What's even sadder is that they use some really strong and popular IPs for their games. I feel like Greyhill Entertainment saw that when Skull Island released, people were talking about it being the worst game of the year. And the people at Greyhill were like, wouldn't it be fucking hilarious if we proved everybody wrong by releasing an even worse game? And they did just that. While I don't think anybody expected much from a King Kong game, the fact is that a Walking Dead game done right could have been big. Hell, there's so many games out there to steal ideas from. Yet Walking Dead Destinies takes an easy formula for success and completely butchers it in every single way possible. Tell me if this premise sounds cool to you guys. Play through the Walking Dead show with your favorite Walking Dead characters in a survival horror experience that also offers different narratives that change the entire story based on your decisions. I don't know about you guys, but that sounds pretty damn awesome to me. It's like if you took the narrative side of the Telltale Walking Dead games and combined them with the gameplay of a Resident Evil game. It literally screams masterpiece. Yet Flux Games and Greyhill Entertainment fucked it up. I guess let's start with the story because honestly, that seemed like it was going to be the main focus of the game. And unfortunately, there wasn't much to praise about here. The one thing I will say is that it was cool getting to see where Shane's character may have ended up had he been the one to survive, not Rick. But other than that, there weren't really any interesting story bits throughout the game. Most of the cutscenes shared similar traits to a few other games on this list. Still images. Yep. What I mentioned earlier about Redfall is an issue here as well. You get a bunch of freeze frames with characters talking. Like, why do studios think this concept works? Sure, maybe it could be explained for games like Redfall and King Kong since those games really focus more on gameplay versus story, but the Walking Dead Destinies main feature is the story. Like, the biggest thing that was advertised for this game is the ability to go down different routes compared to the story in the show. yet they thought still images were the way to go about this experience. There's also unanswered questions and mysteries in the story that were just left to the player to figure out on their own. Like, I can't tell you how many times the game didn't explain something because it assumed that most of the people playing this game would have watched the series. But oh, I wish that was the worst of it. The gameplay is even more annoying to deal with. If you thought Skull Island was bad with the same 3-hit combo, how about using a melee weapon that uses the same damn broken animation over and over again? Or how about you hear the same damn line repeated over and over again every time a zombie grabs you? Or the level clipping, zombies spawning out of nowhere, broken QuickTime events. Guys, I could go on and on. As a matter of fact, let's play a game in the comments. Tell me something in the comments that annoys you regarding a technical issue like bugs or glitches that you've seen in other games. Then I'll tell you if that issue appears in this game or not. Spoiler, I'd say 90% of the stuff that you guys mentioned to me will pop up in this game. Trust me, I mean that. That's not even a joke. But that does it for this episode of Nerd Space Games. What do you guys think of my list for the worst games of 2023? Are there any that I missed? Also, do you agree with me saying that Walking Dead Destinies is worse than Skull Island Rise of Kong? Let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Anyway, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe for more ranking videos like this one, especially if you like the end of the year 2023 topics, as I'll be doing videos like this one throughout the entire month of December. But thanks for watching, and as always guys, I'll catch you on the next episode of Nerd Space Games. Take care.